Welcome everybody to another edition of 777. I am joined by my co-host Nick. Nick, tell him what you've been up to.
What is going on? What I was today, I was actually finishing editing up a new show, a new episode for. It's on that. I think he's considered. Oh yeah, he might be a Gnostic dude. I'm trying to think if he's a Gnostic saint or not in the OTO or through the EGC, but I do think he's considered a Gnostic. This guy Manny, a Manichaeism.
Ooh, yeah. Well, he's an extreme dualist, right? And this is where we get our Manichaean terminology from. But
Yeah, yo, that guy was. He was fucking pretty serious with like the no's and don'ts. You know what I found really interesting about him? And I was like, all right, I'm not the only fucking sick fuck that thinks this way. I don't have a problem with people having kids. I just decide not to. But he did say he thought that people having kids is just perpetuating the issue.
misery. Yep. It's always something funny I find about all these radical dualists is that they're anti-natalists, you know? They don't believe that having more children is good because they believe this world is evil. It's a very Gnostic concept.
Yeah, well, the way I look at it is like I don't look at it so much as a prison planet, but I guess I do to a point to where it's like, well, you don't have any prisoners. If there's no prisoners, there's no prison.
Right.
So yeah, us obviously keeping the race going is going to keep the prison open.
It shows an extreme amount of faith and aestheticism, right? When people can say, "No, we're ending it all." It's like, wow. You're just going to take all of this world for granted and just throw it all away. So if it is a prison planet, that's one hell of a sacrifice, I think.
No, I know. It's just. Yeah.
I think we have a good impact on the world for the most part.
Yeah.
So today I wanted to go take a little bit of a detour. We've been doing the whole Aleister Crowley 777 thing, but there's a really good video by Gnostic Informant where he's breaking down the golden ratio and how it applies to gematria in the Bible and to phi. And so I thought we could just do a live reaction to it. And so I will bring that up here. Now, Gnostic Informant has a pretty influential channel where he's going over a lot of biblical mysteries and biblical stuff. But this one is less about the text and more about sort of the origin of why people think that there is a Bible code. And we see in 777 over and over again, he is often referring to this Bible code. And I think it requires more fleshing out. So I thought a quick detour might help people understand what we've been talking about on this show just a little bit better. So let's start her up. And anytime you want me to, just
let me just remind the listeners. I've mentioned this guy. I've tagged him because you know on Twitter. Unless you follow each other back, you can't DM somebody. And I have tagged this guy or commented on his shit about coming on the show, and he said, "Yeah, it's just I can't get in touch with him." So the listeners, if anybody's active on social media, go over there and tag the dude and be like, "When are you going on the Occult Reject?" Because he said yes.
We need the mob effect. So if you if you're watching this later, get out there and say, "Hey, Gnostic Informant, why don't you go on the Occult Rejects? They like your stuff, and it would be a great interview, a good starting point." So yeah, just let's make it happen, everybody. All right, so let's start it here.
I wanted to jump on here and do a response to some of the comments I get about my introduction of my live streams. Yesterday, I did a whole video on the Platonic influence on Genesis, mostly from Plato's Timaeus, but also other texts like the Statesman. It describes a paradise or Garden of Eden-like place in close to Genesis. Anyways, the introduction of my videos usually show the movie Pi, where there's this guy sitting in a bar talking to a rabbi, and he tells him that the Torah is like a code sent from God.
So Darren Aronofsky, right? This is not the first sort of biblical movie that he's done. He also did that Noah movie. So he is very deep into this whole Bible code thing.
Torah is just a long string of numbers. Some say that it's a code sent to us from God.
And the guy is like, "Oh, that's interesting." He's like, "Oh, that's kid stuff. Check this out. Garden of Eden, Kedem, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil, Hetzekayim. It's 233 and 144.
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's just kid stuff. Check this out, okay? The word for the Garden of Eden, Kedem. Numerical translation, 144. Now the value of tree of knowledge, all right, in the garden, right? Eitz HaChaim, 233. 144, 233. And you can take
You divide those up, and the other guy cuts them off and goes, "That's Fibonacci sequence." Fibonacci.
you can take those
Fibonacci
numbers. So
like the Fibonacci sequence.
Fibonacci.
Fibonacci is an Italian mathematician in the 13th century. If you divide 144 into 233, the result approaches theta.
Theta?
Theta. Greek symbol. Golden ratio. Golden spiral.
Wow. I never saw that before. That's like that series you find in nature? Like the face of a sunflower?
Wherever the spirals.
You see this math everywhere.
See, now he doesn't really get into it too much, but I want to especially stress exactly why they look at phi as being such an important number for the Greeks, is because it's repeated over and over and over again in nature. And so when they're basing all of their art and technology and mathematics on this number, it's specifically because all of these things are repeating over and over again in nature. So this is like following the path of the gods, or the numerical values that you find in nature first. So, he gives a lot of credit to the Greeks in this one, but I'd say it's
I wonder if that's why Nazis are so big into botany. I always wondered that because of that stuff too.
They were huge in trying to figure out the laws of nature and the base code of reality. I think that's what they were going for.
It's really good. Plants would be great for that.
Yeah. It's make up everything.
Golden ratio. That's the ancient Greeks mathematics.
Come on, let's go to ancient Greece, to the time of Pythagoras, the master egghead of them all.
Pythagoras?
The father of mathematics and music.
Mathematics and music?
Ah, you'll find mathematics in the darndest places. Watch. First, we'll need a string. Stretch it good and tight. Plunk it. Now divide in half. Plunk again. You see? It's the same tone, one octave higher. Now divide the next section. And the next. Pythagoras discovered the octave had a ratio of 2 to 1. With simple fractions, he got this. And from this harmony in numbers developed the musical scale of today.
So it's not just in the visual representation, it's also in sound, right? So these are natural expressions of phi that get repeated over and over again. This is why you would want to encode things in this ratio. Also why we see it happening again and again in 777. He's paying attention to things like the Fibonacci sequence when it comes to the numbering of words. Just a very relevant thing when it comes to this stuff.
You can imagine how excited Pythagoras was when he shared his findings with his pals, a fraternity of eggheads, known as the Pythagoreans. They used to meet in secret to discuss their mathematical discoveries. Only members were allowed to attend. They had a secret emblem, the pentagram.
So again, mystery colleges. What's that?
They really do that with a pentagram on their head?
Yeah.
Oh shit. Okay.
And it's funny that a guy like Walt Disney would be producing this, because he is a member of one of those secret societies. He was a member of the what's the children's order for the Freemasons called? The Malay Society.
Yeah.
Right? He was never a full member of the Masons, but if this is what they're teaching in the Malay Society, that's pretty interesting. But again, all of this stuff used to be passed on from generation to generation through the mystery schools, which the Freemasons are a certain iteration of.
Let's see what the topic is for today. It was our old friend Pythagoras who discovered that the pentagram was full of mathemagic. The two shorter lines combined exactly equal the third. And this line shows the magic proportions of the famous golden section. The second and third lines exactly equal the fourth. Once again, we have the golden section. But this is only the beginning. Hidden within the pentagram is a secret for creating a golden rectangle, which the Greeks admired for its beautiful proportions and magic qualities. The star contains the golden rectangle many times over.
Just a quick note, though. What was the guest we had on who was talking about constructing sacred geometry and then realizing, hey, this is like a portal into a whole other world? You got to make this stuff firsthand so that you can actually experience it. Once you can start to go through the steps to create these different, ratios and numbers in your own hands, it becomes like a portal. And this is why you use the sacred geometry in magic, right? So this is very applicable to what's coming up next.
It's a most remarkable shape. It can mathematically reproduce itself indefinitely. All these rectangles have exactly the same proportions. This figure also contains a magic spiral that repeats the proportions of the golden section into infinity. To the Greeks, the golden rectangle represented a mathematical law of beauty. We find it in their classical architecture. The Parthenon, perhaps one of the most famous of early Greek buildings, contains many golden rectangles.
The Erechtheion.
These same golden proportions are also found in their sculpture.
So again, all of this mathematics is found in the human form as well. And in perfect proportion to one another, it creates the type of beauty that the Greeks were obsessed with. So they're saying not only is it found in plants, not only is it found in all of these other places, it's found inside of the form that we are brought into. It's very much about ensouling or informing the sacred or the beauty beyond imagine, right? So when they talk about the forms of Plato, right? So his sacred idea of the forms, the perfect forms, this is what they're talking about. This is how it is, I think, accurately applied. What do you think, Nick?
I was gonna say I even do mention that stuff in the Sacred Geometry series. Is that, even some of the ones that would look like, oh wow, like that looks so plain, it's actually built like that. Especially like a lot of like the columns and the square looking shit. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, when they said that and they started showing the architecture, I was like, oh, this sounds familiar.
Right. And this is going to get into gematria in just a minute, but I thought, this is the perfect application. This is why the Kabbalah is so important, is because it goes back into this Greek stuff.
In the centuries that followed, the golden rectangle dominated the idea of beauty in architecture throughout the Western world. The Cathedral of Notre Dame is an outstanding example. The Renaissance painters knew this secret well. Think of a pentagram, Donald. Now put another inside, a third, and a fourth. No pencil is sharp enough to draw as fine as you can think, and no paper large.
There it is. No pencil is sharp enough to draw a form as sharp as you can think, right? So this is where magic really starts to come in, is because if you can start to construct this on paper, you can construct it in your mind a lot more finely. This is what's, sharpening your imagination, creating something that is beyond even replication, right? This is why the mind is closer to God, right? The nous.
The noose. Yes. Yo, when I
Your imagination.
Yeah.
when I cover Plotinus, like a lot of the stuff, like I'll be told a lot of stuff I'll read. So then if I don't hear it pronounced, sometimes I'm just like saying it wrong. And I think I called it noose or whatever. I called it something, no, nous or some shit like that. The whole episode, bro. And then when I went, I was like, you know what? Why do I have a feeling I'm saying this wrong? And I threw it into an app to say it. And I was like, motherfucker, I had to go through the whole show and edit every fucking time I said that. I wanted to blow my brains out.
Oh, man.
Yeah, someone said it like 50 times. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's a huge thing in that stuff.
Right. Like I was thinking about the noose of Zeus, right? Because in the
That's good. I like that noose. Yeah.
In the Orphic hymns, they talk about all things round his head is altered shine, right? So in the Orphic hymn, they're talking about the nous of Zeus. Basically, he's the creator of the matrix, right? So, you know, they make it clear. And also you've got Athena who springs from the head of Zeus, and Athena is wisdom. So it's sort of like this is the manifestation of the nous of Zeus, or like the logos of it. But, you know, it's a different theology, but, you know, once you understand it, it's not hard to see why it would be copied over and over again, kind of like this golden ratio.
In fact, it is only in the mind that we can conceive infinity. Mathematical thinking has opened the doors to the exciting adventures of science.
I'm the third dog. I've never seen so many doors before.
Each discovery leads to many others, an endless chain.
What's the matter with these doors? These doors won't open. They're locked.
Of course they are locked. These are the doors of the future, and the key is...
Mathematics.
Right. Mathematics. The boundless treasures of science are locked behind those doors. In time, they will be opened by the curious and inquiring minds of future generations. In the words of Galileo,
Isn't that interesting? So they're throwing a little bit more magical thinking into this this whole milieu by talking about the doors of the future are open through mathematics. Our mathematics hasn't progressed at all since the 1970s, right? We're still stuck on stupid with string theory and all of the rest of these things that are not really progressing human understanding. There might be more and better things, but not accepted in the world of science. So what they're talking about here is breaking everything down into numerical values and using those numerical values to construct models to predict the future and to create these different systems. And we're still stuck in the 1970s. So if you even take this this short thing seriously, which I think you should, they're saying that the doors of the future are kind of being closed right now. So
mathematics is the alphabet with which God has written the universe.
The spiral that you see in nature, sunflowers, human embryos, galaxies, beautiful faces, the mark of beauty, the mark of God, the mark of good itself.
yeah. What were you saying?
We have that in our cornea. Spiral too.
Yes, we do. And if you look at the proportions of the eyeball itself, you've got the outer circle, the inner circle, the inner circle. All of these things go by the Fibonacci sequence.
Oh, even the heart. Think about the heart, how that kind of actually wraps up, tell you the truth. If you think about it, you have a heart. It's
the heart is kind of a Fibonacci spiral right there in the middle.
Yeah.
The Greeks used to build their temples based on the ratio of what is known as phi. Now, the movie calls it theta. I have no idea why. It's not theta, it's phi. So the movie's wrong about that. But the movie is correct. And people ask me this all the time, and here's the answer. They say, is that really in the Bible? Or is that made up? Is Hetzekayim and Kedem, when we do gematria and get their numerology, when we divide that up, is that the golden ratio? The answer is yes. And then people ask me, what about the Greek side, the Septuagint? Is that in there too? No, it's not. The Greek does not have the golden ratio. The Hebrew does. So, by the way, first of all, this is weird.
Also very important to note, because you've got people like Lady Babylon 666 that says that it was written originally in in Greek. If it was, it would be in isopsephic values, which would be the Greek version.
Yeah,
It's
totally
not.
different.
Exactly. So you do have that sort of proof there. If it's supposed to be mathematically perfect, i.e., from God, then you've got to go with the Hebrew version instead of the Greek version. So that is kind of another proof there.
Because the Greeks are the ones who invented gematria. The word gematria is not even a Hebrew word. It's a Greek word. It has no Semitic etymology. It's the same etymology where we get the word geometry from, Greek mathematics, isopsephy, they call it. And this is Pythagorean numerology mysticism. Even the early...
Now, he doesn't really get into it too much, but the idea is that isopsephy is just where you put a little dot over each Greek letter representing a number. And so you would have to know the numbering system to transform what is first a Greek letter into a number. And what do we see right here? 888, 1480, right? All of these different numerical values in here are different from Greek to Hebrew, but this is isopsephy being combined with gematria. Gematria is, generally more of a Hebrew thing.
Christians were big into this. 888 is Jesus. He's the divine logos. There's 8 monads in the Greek alphabet. When you drop the digamma out, there's 8 duods and there's 8 triples. 888, which is the gematria of Jesus, Jesus in Greek. He's the logos incarnate. That's very interesting. The Valentinians were obsessed with this. There's Basilides,
This is why I wanted to do this one, because you've been working on Valentinus for quite some time.
Yeah. Yo, it's funny. I even went through the script again last night and edited it again. I'm like, yo, I just need to fucking record this thing. I'm stuck on the script for weeks.
Right. So, is Valentinus obsessed with this sort of numbering of God?
Yeah, from what I got out of it, he was pretty. He was big into that, and I think was he also? I might be confused with I've covered some of my other ones. Was he also big into rituals too, as well?
Very much so. All of this stuff had to be mathematically perfect so that it could resonate with the divine. And I think that's what a lot of people are missing on this stuff, is that when you write these words and these letters, it has to resonate with the divine, and phi being a divine ratio that you can find in nature, and all of these different things resonates on the same level as this text. And that's why it is numbered in that way, is because what you're trying to do is to simulate or create a resonance between the words, letters, numbers you're writing, and all of nature, all of the divine. So that's really what I think it comes down to.
And he was a Christian too, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. And again, all of this.
I wanted to cover him actually. It's interesting around that time that he was around. I think I even named it the episode, if I stay with it, The War for Christianity, because at that time you have all these dudes that actually have their own opinions. That, I mean, it's actually I don't know if they realize how many options there were to finally choose which one we're going to go with. I don't know if a lot of people realize that.
Right. Well, by the time everything was sort of distilled down into one comprehensive system, they had a lot to choose from.
Yes, that's what I'm sure. Yeah, that's what I wanted to show. I don't think a lot of people fucking know that at all.
Right.
Or people that were considered Christians back then. I don't think people realize.
Right. So all of it is based upon this theology of number. And the theology of number is what we find in all of this Kabbalah stuff. That's where it's coming from. This is the base level code of reality. That's why they wanted it to be perfect, because it's perfect in nature. You can follow the path of nature to find these perfect ratios. And therefore, the word of God has to be in that similar form. That's why they say every word comes from God, right? That's what they're talking about. And that gets confused for a lot of people.
Palladians, another Gnostic sect. Abraxas' name, Abrasax, means 365. He is the time god, the year, the solar cycle, 365. You also have Nero, 666. So you can see Christians are using gematria. Philo uses gematria. The Kabbalists use gematria. People push back against this, and they say, this is just dubious. You guys are arbitrarily choosing 2 random words in the Hebrew Bible. Why not Adam's name? Why not, I don't know, why not the tree of knowledge and the tree of life? Why can't we divide them?
It is too. Adam's name, the tree of knowledge, the tree of life, all of that is still geometric. It's all of the same character, right? Adam Kadmon. We find that same sort of focus towards the number in the words that were chosen to be these different characters.
Up. Why does it have to be the Garden of Eden and the tree of knowledge of good and evil? It's a fair pushback, and the reason why is because the golden ratio shows up naturally everywhere. So if you start taking 2 random words in Hebrew and just start dividing them up, just keep picking 2 random words randomly. Eventually, about 100 times in, you're going to get the golden ratio. That's how frequently it shows up. But the pushback against that is Kedem and Eitzakayim are in the same passage together. They're not. It's not like I'm taking a word from Genesis and another word from.
This is why Aleister Crowley has chosen the words and the numbers that he did is based upon where they're at in the different stories, right? These are the essential or the stressed words in these different sections. That's, again, this is what the people who are into Kabbalah, into these numerical systems are looking at, is because within the given sections of the text, that's where you're going to find those golden ratios again and again and again. This is part of the formulation of how this religious system is based.
Isaiah or even numbers, and I'm just randomly picking those 2 and putting them together. No, they're in the same passage together, in the same chapter, in the same verses, one verse apart from each other, and they're very much related. Kedem is the garden. The tree of knowledge of evil is what gets them out of the garden. So you can see it maps. It even looks like the golden ratio if you think about it, because the garden is that pinpoint, that perfect monad, and then you can see the spiraling out into the golden ratio, which is the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So from the one comes the many. So the Garden of Eden, from eating from the tree of good knowledge, they leave the realm of forms, the perfect realm of forms that's all nous, it's all intelligible, and they go into the realm of matter and decay and death. That is the...
Now, just again, what we're talking about there is from the one comes the many. This is very, very Platonic, right? And that influences so much thinking.
That's even Kabbalistic, which who knows if that was influenced anyway. But yeah, Kether comes from everything.
Right. And so once we can sort of map it out in that way, that's when this stuff like Kabbalah really starts to make sense, is because what they're trying to do is saying it spirals out from the one. And then you've got, people like Tool making entire albums in the Fibonacci sequence because it has always been related. This number sequence has been related back to God himself, right? The one, the source, the monad. And what we saw with the very first thing, dividing up the different parts of the monad gives you different ratios, and those different ratios have different sounds, right? This is the idea of the emanations of form. And that's why all of this stuff is important and plays a role, is because now we're starting to see the spiral. And when you can see the spiral coming from creation, then whatever's happening in the narrative sort of takes a backseat to the perfect ratios that you're trying to create. It's a different way of looking at it, but I think equally as valid.
What
golden ratio
I find interesting too, it's not so much like the golden ratio or a spiral, but if you kind of like, I've always wondered, like I question what's out there to begin with. And I have wondered if things are going on a little bit differently, if they are real out there. And the way Tycho Brahe kind of looked at it is the way I actually thought would make sense, is like, it's more of like the sun and the moon are spinning around us. And I do wonder, like, again, it's not a spiral, but it is like something's, oh, it's circular. And I've always wondered, like, just my opinion, I've wondered if the moon or the sun has something to do with that spiral type thing going on.
That kind of gets into Einsteinian physics as well, and relativity, because, as they're moving out there, you have a time dilation between you and that object in motion. So Tycho Brahe's mathematical modeling of the universe is still better than the heliocentric model.
Yeah.
How could that be? Well, if you go to Einsteinian physics, it kind of has an answer for you. There's a time dilation between you and that object out there. So if you're looking at it from the heliocentric model, it can never be perfect. If you're looking at it from your perspective, it has more perfection included in those calculations than if you're doing it the other way around. So just from the human perspective, again, every moment is half you and half the outside world. It's better to start from within as opposed to starting from without.
One thing I do find interesting too, I didn't notice until like, I don't know, recently, maybe the last few months, because of some of the guests I've had on. I didn't know it was a thing where people actually followed Brahe's idea and didn't really look at Kepler's. And I was like, I should tell you something if they're occultists that they're looking at his model in that Kepler's.
Absolutely, because it's more mathematically perfect. And that's really what made Tycho Brahe the center of the universe, is because he calculated it out with his, primitive instruments that he turned into huge machines,
Dude, by eye, he was off like an eighth of an arc minute or some fucking ridiculous shit by eye, dude. His stuff there is insane accurate.
Absolutely. And go back and listen to Occult Rejects Tycho Brahe. It is very entertaining. You got to get into this mathematical way of seeing the world, because this is how people today even still use these mathematical models, because they still hold up.
That's why I do think people do get obsessed with the skies, because of the mathematics in there. I think they catch on to that, and that's what gets them going. Because you don't even have to really trust who the fuck knows what it is, but I'm just doing math with what's going on out there.
Right. Zero trust system. You're just using the numbers. This is why you've got the trivium, grammar, logic, and rhetoric, and then the quadrivium, which includes astronomy, astrology. What they were trying to do is use all of the mathematics in the universe to fully understand the relationships or the associations between all of these things in the heavens that have these very periodic cycles to our own lives, right? You're making those strong associations. And again, what we're doing is going from numbers to letters to words to whole books to whole chapters, right? It's the same idea. You're just creating those strong associations that appear in nature first and then get manifest in other ways into the story. And it has a strong, strong power to it.
That is kind of mind-blowing. This looks intentional to me, especially when you couple that up with what Philo says. The idea of the documentary hypothesis that this is a mistake, that there's two atoms, one in Genesis 2, one in Genesis 3, and one of them is made in the image of God, and the other one's made from a clump of dust. That people say that's a mistake. But Philo says, no, there's two atoms. There's the spiritual perfect atom, and then there's the earthly atom. Another thing, in Plato's Timaeus, the world soul, which is created in the image of God, and all of and humans are created in the image of the world soul, happens to have a dyad within it, a female life-giving aspect, Hava, Eve, Zoe. So the world soul is a dyad with a female spirit. Plato says this himself. He calls it a her. He says that her spirit is even older than the world soul itself. So just like Adam and Eve are a dyad, Plato's world soul is a dyad. So and the only two texts in the ancient world that have God creating man in the image of God is Plato's Timaeus and Genesis. So,
bingo. Now that's important because they're both working off of the same mathematical base formulations. And that's why they sort of integrate so well with each other between Platonism and the Bible. These are just two stories using the same modeling technique, going back to the golden ratio itself. right?
So yeah, the gematria thing, it comes from the Pythagoreans. That's an idea that comes from Greeks. The word gematria is not a Semitic word. It has no antecedent in Semitic word. It's a Greek word. It's where we get geometry from. So I think when you couple that up with Plato's influence, and you say, "Wow, they're using two words. They're constructing some sort of. It looks like they're constructing something here." Now, is it possible that the critics are correct? This is all just made up, or this is all just coincidence? It's possible. I'm not closed off to that. I'm not dying on this hill. But I wouldn't be surprised if this was some sort of number mysticism thing happening in Genesis.
Well, there you go.
That's even something that Pico della Mirandola is even known for, is just dragging, like gematria back into like the Bible and stuff, or like using the Kabbalah, which would include that with Catholicism.
That's why this thing is so strange, is because he's not giving you all of these background details before throwing you into the deep end.
That's why me and you even said in the show that when it comes to the gematria part, he's speaking to you as if you already understand it. Unfortunately, it's basically what it seems like.
Right.
Or you have an idea of about it.
And he might have been thrown into the deep end himself and didn't fully realize it. But by the time he's, put onto this code, he's already talking in code. So,
yeah, it could be another thing too.
Right. So all of this stuff goes way, way back in history with all of these different footnotes and all of these different essential parts to understand before even getting to why number is also letter, is also word. You have to understand the basis and the background for it. And I think that video really does lay out a good example of that, which would be phi, which is where you find these numbers in the Bible that associate with phi, because that is God's number. That's what's being imprinted into nature. And again, making that thing that is the reflection of nature is like making a thing that is reflective of God. So this is the Greek sort of cosmological concept, is we're co-creators with God. We exist on the same plane that is being created and destroyed on the same level of mathematics and, architecture and all these other principles that come back to number. And so this is where it's coming from, essentially. And I really like the fact that he would lay it out in such a Greek way, because far too often people lay it out in a Hebrew way. And that's, again, throwing you in the deep end without giving you the explanation behind it.
Yeah, this was actually really fun. It was a good video to show.
Absolutely. And, giving people that background information lets them know why it's important, and why we're doing this today is because now you can use those numbers, you can use those sequences in your own formulations as you're doing magic yourself. That's the important part of 777. It's for the individual user. You're just taking the same things that all of these other people created society with, created these buildings with, created beauty with, and then you can use it yourself. You can make it your own. And that's why we're doing it, is to allow people to use the tools of the elites, because they're not really elites. They're all a bunch of dumbasses. They're just going by the formula,
That's funny. Yeah.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you for joining us again.
That was fun.
Thank you to Gnostic Informant for making that video so we could content farm your stuff. And
Yo, go over to that guy and tell him he's got to come on the Occult Rejects. Anywhere that if you happen to follow that guy, you're on social media, look for him and comment on his shit. Got to get him on the show. And he said yes twice publicly. So where the fuck are you?
Right.
Get him.
Tag him in there. Let's see if we can get him on the show. I think he would really enjoy this kind of stuff, because he really likes this sort of topic, and we're more than happy to talk about it with him. So see you guys next time. This has been another 777.